This is the Xshot Insanity Dreadhammer from the Horrorfire subline. Let's talk about this thing, because it takes one of my favorite Xshot blasters and just gives it like a really cool makeover. Now the thing about this blaster is that if it looks familiar, that's because this is nearly identical to the Xshot Crusher, one of my favorite spring-powered blasters of all time. For a couple reasons, but mainly, it's an entirely spring-powered blaster that has a rotating barrel gimmick and slam fire. It also uses this chain so you can reload things super easily, and if it maintains that awesome pedigree that the Crusher set up, but also just adding like a bunch of cool extra features like this bone thing, and this bone thing, and this clackety-clack bone thing. Now, because this is part of the Insanity line, there are a bunch of additional tactical rails where you can configure this with other blasters. And here, looking on this Doomsday box, you can see exactly how they recommend you set it up. I did mess around with this a little bit with the Doomsday, and I didn't find it necessarily all that, I don't know, stable feeling, and it seemed to kind of get in the way of the chain and operating the blaster in a way that you would want to use in a foam dart battle. It's impressive, it's cool when you're coming at somebody with just like blades and foam things spinning all around you, but when it comes to like actually getting darts down the road, you're going to want to use this thing pretty much exclusively because it's got slam fire. But what this has that the Crusher doesn't is this piece right here. What this allows me to do is it attached to the tripod for the Xshot Insanity Ragefire. But the issue that you see is that the chain kind of gets in the way. What you'll have to do is you'll have to unlink the chain so that it feeds in one end and just spits out the other. You're not going to want to have this rotating around and around and around because you run the risk of it catching on the tripod if you have it angled in such a way that interferes with the operation of the blaster. But it's not like a big problem for me. It's just a really cool feature that they added so that you could change the play pattern of this particular blaster and use it in different ways. I think that's part of the cleverness behind the Xshot Insanity line. This is a dart blaster after all, so let's put some darts in this thing. Ready? Here we go. There's a lot of feedback you get from this blaster because when you're cranking back on the handle to prime it, firing the dart, and having this rotate and the skull clacking up and down, you really feel like you're in the middle of a battle. It's a great addition, and while we don't have one of those spinning foam blades like we do on the Doomsday or the Reaper X, this thing more than makes up for it because it gives you that extra feedback that the other two don't. And this piece right here goes extremely well with the overall style of this blaster. The areas that look and stand out make it just something really cool and unique to look at. This is something that I haven't seen in an Xshot blaster to date, and I'm really liking the direction that they're going with giving this really heavy aesthetic over a blaster concept that really works. Now, one thing that I would have changed, which is kind of funny because the Doomsday added some extra dart storage that didn't seem needed, but these things right here would have been amazing hollowed out so that you could store some darts in there to make it look like this engine or whatever piece this is. Looks like it's powered by darts or using darts to power it. But let's take a look at this thing all loaded up with the other two blasters in the line. We will make this the final boss configuration of the Xshot Insanity Horrorfire line. So hang on just a second. I gotta get this all set up. Here we go. This is what it looks like all assembled together. Let's see if I can't get that all in camera. It's a lot to look at. It is visually complex. What is more complex is trying to figure out just how to hold this blaster so that it doesn't get in its own way. I think what I would have to do is I would have to rotate the Doomsday with the Reaper X because I'm a righty, so this part right here, the stock on this, is getting in the way. It's heavy, it's cumbersome, but it is imposing, and it's something that you don't see on the blaster aisle. It's almost like if Lego and blasters got together and made a whole thing together. That is what I think this Xshot Insanity Horrorfire line is all about, which honestly, this takes the concept of the Insanity line just a little further, just a little more extreme, which when you're using names like Insanity is what you would hope for, what you would expect. Now, if you are curious, the chain on this is different very different from the Xshot Insanity Ragefire. The chief difference is on the Ragefire there is an open spot on one side of the chain, and what that does is it allows the dart to peel off into the flywheels. This is an entirely spring-powered, plunger-focused kind of operation, so this is entirely solid. So if you're using this blaster in place of the Ragefire as something sitting on your tripod, just be sure that you're grabbing the right chain, which is something that I guess I would have liked to have seen changed differently. I understand that the different firing mechanisms are going to need different operations. Having two different style chains that are so close in what they look like and how they operate can lead to some confusion. In fact, when I first got the Ragefire, I tried using some of these old Crusher chains on it. What would end up happening is that the blaster would jam up and I would just have a tough time trying to get it all right. But here's the thing. In absence of some crazier themes happening on the blaster space, because for the longest time, Nerf kind of held the crown for really strong or really out there themes. We had things like Zombie Strike, Doomlands, all the other sublines that went along with that. But it seems like that spot is up for grabs once again, and Xshot comes rushing in with some way out there design, something very different than what they've done in the past, and it's really paying off. I mean, okay, so let's just look at what Xshot's doing lately. So we have the Insanity line. So this is the base Insanity line. This looks like something that you would see on the blaster shelf aisle. Looks very fitting, fits in with the crowd. We have the Horrorfire subline, which looks like Monster Hunter slash, scary movie. And then we have the Blastercorn. Three wildly different takes on a blaster, and it's visually interesting. It's visually exciting to see so many different styles, so many different configurations of what you can do with it. And configuration is the key word when we're working with the Insanity line. While I don't think that this Dreadhammer is the best main central unit for hanging other blasters off of it, I think as we saw, it does an okay job at making sure that it does do what it describes on the box. Whether that's useful or helpful to you in a foam dart battle is entirely up in the air. Me personally, something like this is good enough to use without any extra modification or additional blasters hanging off it in this case. But I want to know from you, which of these blasters in this subline do you like the best? Is it this guy right here? Is it the Dreadhammer? Is it the Reaper X? Or is it the Doomsday? I think the best part of it is all of that very visceral feedback you get as everything's moving, clacking, shaking, getting darts out of the barrel and towards your opponent. So that's everything that I know about the Xshot Insanity Horrorfire Dreadhammer. If you like blasters, we've been talking a lot about blasters. If you like pop culture, action figures, trinkety kind of things, or 6-inch scale action figures, which are totally cool, you definitely need to be following along for more videos from this channel. More followers means more videos, and more videos means more fun. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.